This is lesson 25, and I'm starting it in a little different way in order that everybody can see my thinking on the state of the union of the teaching profession. I've decided to put my conclusions right at the beginning. So this lesson and earlier lessons show that the teaching profession is in dire condition in the United States. Education student enrollments have dropped dramatically, more teachers are leaving the profession, and many existing teachers have low morale and would like to leave. It is predicted that the teaching profession will soon be 200,000 teachers short of filling their needs for 300,000 teachers every year. In other words, they're going to be 2/3 short, and that's an annual need. There are three important barriers that must be improved before teachers' morale and emotional state can be improved. These are their administrative support systems at school, the general lack of respect for the profession either by the public or their students, and often terrible behavior of the students. Without solving these problems, the lingering problem of pay need not be solved because no amount of money will draw adults into classrooms and subject them to the indignities they will suffer. So here we go on the formal lesson 25, the state of the profession. As you go through these lessons, you may not have paid any attention to the quotations I selected for each one. I will not let you do that this time. This quotation, let me read it to you. Those who can do and those who can't teach. This was from George Bernard Shaw in Men and Superman, written in 1903. This quotation has probably done more harm to teachers than any other utterance. During my lifetime, I have heard people quote it when they wanted to put teachers down or try to be clever and get a snicker. As the citation says, these words have become a constant and consistent irritation to teachers far and wide. With this quotation as a backdrop, let's take stock of some of the things we have learned in these lessons so far. Lesson 1. Unfortunately, I found very little to say that was complimentary. The American public education system used to be the envy of the world, but that is no longer the case. Continuing with learnings from lesson 1. For some reason, the U.S. became complacent and began to reduce the rigor of its educational offerings. The self-esteem movement has done an entire generation a deep disservice. Self-esteem was not something conferred, it is earned through taking risks and developing skills. When children stretch themselves, they expand their sense of their own capability and then feel confident to tackle the next challenge. From lesson 2, we feature 3 speakers. These 3 speakers had nothing good to say about the U.S. educational system. Lesson 3, 25% of our students are functionally illiterate. This means their reading skills are the 10-year-old child. That's 825,000 students every year. In other words, I'm talking about high school graduates. These are all high school graduates, 25% of who cannot read better than a 10-year-old child. 38% are numerically illiterate. This means they are unable to solve the simplest math problems. There are 1,254,000 students like this graduating every year. And lastly, 33% of our high school graduates are digitally illiterate. They can't solve problems on a computer. That's about 1.1 million students. From lesson 4, some of our American schools situations are deplorable. This video exemplifies the meaning of that word. In other words, I'm giving my definition of deplorable by showing you this video. Lesson 5. It's about grade inflation. In 1998, 39% of high schoolers had an A average. By 2016, this rate has increased to 47%. Meanwhile, the average SAT score fell from 1026 to 1002 on a 1600-point scale. So in other words, they're getting better grades, but their test performance is dropping. Grade inflation is running rampant in U.S. high schools, a new study finds. There are now more students getting A's than any other grade. Sociologists have observed a rise in grade inflation for nearly 2 decades, particularly in higher education. The term valedictorian once was a distinction bestowed on the single highest achiever in a graduating class. Now it's an honor less rare. In 2014, the title went to 72 out of 222 graduates from an Ohio high school, and the next year in Virginia, 117 out of 457 students claimed that title, or they were awarded that title. Lesson 7. We have a shortage of teachers that will grow to 200,000 by the year 2025. That's out of a need of 300,000. I've already mentioned that point in my conclusion. Lesson 9, where we were defining 3 different levels of behavior, with the disruptive children being the ones that are a problem. The teachers pursued root cause. Why are the kids this way? And they came up with 3 root causes. 1 was parents or parenting. Number 2 was culture. And number 3, by choice. Pointing out that some older children just choose to be hellraisers. Lesson 10. 80% of our schools lose classroom time to misbehaving students. That's an estimate that came from an important 2004 study by the Public Agenda located in Brooklyn, New York. When you take that 80% and multiply it by the number of public schools, you get 80,000 public schools have a problem with losing teacher time due to discipline. There is much more to recall, but these points will make my point. Using my athletic event analogy that I used in my speech on February the 3rd, who wants to be on a team like this? Where's the excellence? Where's the quality? What's there to make us proud? Indeed, as we look at what's happening in the world of teachers, more and more people are choosing other occupation. Here's more to substantiate this statement. These are quotations. The teacher shortage is real, large, and growing, and worse than we thought. When indicators of teacher quality, such as certification, relevant training, experience, and so forth, are taken into account, the shortage is even more acute than the current estimate, with high poverty schools suffering the most from the shortage of credentialed teachers. This is a conclusion from the Economic Policy Institute, and it's dated 2019. Working environments clearly play a role in the teacher shortage, along with low pay and weak professional development opportunities. The teacher shortage harms students, teachers, and public education as a whole. In addition, the fact that the shortage is more acute in high poverty schools challenges the U.S. education system goal of providing a sound education equally to all children. So let's look at a video that expands the reasons why teachers quit, and I might add, why they never choose the profession in the first place.
Hello and welcome to Teachings in Education. Why do so many teachers want to quit their profession? In 2018, teachers quit their job in record numbers. One reason, and perhaps the most important cause, is the lack of respect that comes with teaching. And I don't necessarily mean just by the students. Teachers are often disrespected by parents, administrators, and other teachers. No individual should have to deal with being disrespected on a daily basis. The second reason for teachers wanting to leave is the lack of support from administration. Teachers have so much on their plates these days, and they're looking for a little bit of help from the schools. Sometimes that's too much to ask for. Third on the list is the amount of long hours teachers are forced to work. Professionals outside the field of education think this is just an 8 to 3 o'clock job. That is far from the case. It is estimated that some teachers work up to 65 hours per week. Number 4 is a rather obvious reason to leave the profession, which is for more money. Teachers have college degrees from a bachelor's degree and beyond. Many teachers can find work in their related field at a much higher pay rate than teaching. Next on the list, student behavior. Student behavior has become more extreme over the years. Teachers routinely get cursed out, physically threatened, and even assaulted. How can you blame them for wanting to leave? Number 6 is paperwork. Educators get into teaching because they want to help students and share their passion and expertise of the subject matter. However, they find out that teaching has become more about paperwork than actual teaching. I've been in education long enough that I remember when teaching was actually about teaching. Testing is the next reason why some teachers want to leave. Standardized tests add a lot of pressure on not only teachers, but administration, students, and parents. Teachers are being forced to teach to the test. This pressure can make the classroom a very unhappy place. Number 8, emotional distress. A day in the life of a teacher can be an emotional roller coaster. And the last reason is the lack of advancement opportunities in the field. Other than becoming an administrator, there's not many ways a teacher can move up the ladder. And it usually takes a long time to earn a job as an administrator. Therefore, teachers feel stuck in the same place. Right now, I just want to say thank you for your time. Subscribe to this channel and like and share this video as well. See you again soon.
Here are the 9 reasons that teachers quit or never enter the profession in the first place. Number 1 is lack of respect. Number 2 is no support. Number 3 is long hours. Number 4 is they need more money. Number 5 is behavior, and that's the behavior of the students. Number 6 is paperwork. Number 7 is testing. Number 8 is emotional stress. And number 9 is there's no career path. These are the 9 things the video isolated. We'll expand further on several of these points. Here's a slide that illustrates the fact that there's a high interest in leaving the profession. The 3 bars show teachers with less than 10 years, the middle bar teachers 11 to 20 years, and the last bar with more than 20 years. So this display was taken from a report titled the 5th Annual Educator Confidence Report by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. That's a great source. As can be seen, 27% of the younger teachers plan to leave the field. 37% of these young teachers do not have plans but won't rule it out. Attitudes are a little better for the middle teachers from 11 to 20 years at 24%, and lastly for the teachers with 20 or more years, 41% are wanting to get out of the profession. Of course, some of these will go due to retirement, but more than likely not at 20 years. On their salaries, they cannot afford to retire so early. Here's the first of the 10 points, and I'm not going to do them all. Then I'm going to emphasize a little deeper. First, this quotation points out that teacher status or respect is important to school success. The Valedictorian Foundation has established an index that quantifies teacher status around the world. Here's the quotation. This index finally gives academic proof to something we've always instinctively known: the link between the status of teachers in society and the performance of children in school. Now we can say beyond doubt that respecting teachers isn't only an important moral duty, it's essential for a country's educational outcomes. This is a 2018. Here's a chart from the Valedictorian Foundation that ranks teacher status and respect relative to China. What they've done is they've gone into each country listed in this array, and they have submitted 1,000 questionnaires at random to the public to have them evaluate the status of their teachers in that country. And as it happens, China is the best gets the best response from their people of any of the nations listed. So Varke is going to give them a value of 100, just assign them a value of 100. Doesn't mean that they got the 100 on the questionnaire, but because they're the best, they're 100, and they index everybody relative to China. So you can see that China is way up there, Malaysia's close to it. And let me read what the slide says here. If you can't read it, the U.S. score is a bit less than 40, placing the U.S. in the middle of the pack. This should not be a surprise to any American. Teachers are not highly regarded here. Number 2, no support. I had a couple of teachers review my list of concerns, so at least these have been teacher approved. What does lack of support mean? And I'm not saying no support, lack of support. It means that some of the administrators are not doing their job. It means that management doesn't have the teacher's back. It means that a teacher sends a child to the principal's office and nothing happens that helps the situation. It means that teachers get loaded down with responsibilities that take away teaching time, but the administration just lets it happen. It means that the dreaded bureaucracy threatens the teachers who attempt to innovate or be different. It means that the teacher is on their own when they attempt to control student behavior. It means that new teachers are left high and dry in their classroom. The management says to them, here's your classroom, good luck, don't bother me with any issues, you must sink or swim on your own. As a person coming from a long experience in management from a major corporation, I find educational administrators are sorely lacking in management skills. They are not effective team builders, and they often lack backbone. Here is a short video to support the no support complaint.
Certainly that's one of them. I think that our teachers are not respected as the professionals that they are. And too many people look at them as, well, they respect their own teacher. It's interesting as you talk to people, they respect their kid's teacher, but it's all the other teachers that are the problem. Well, the majority of our teachers are quality individuals doing the best job they can. There is, like in every business, you got your sour apples. You got some that are not doing a good job. But the vast majority of them are doing a great job. And I think the key issue as far as teacher morale, at least one of the keys, obviously salary is very important, but as I've talked to teachers, many of them, when they're discouraged, it's oftentimes with the principal. If the principal's not doing a good job, they're dissatisfied with the principal, then they're going to be moving off to another school. So better training for our principals is one thing the state school board's doing, and I'm supporting to help raise teacher morale.
One of the 10 complaints, of course, was more money. If a teacher's concerns are listed in rank order, this is usually not number 1, that is, the money isn't. In my opinion, if the discipline and respect concerns are not resolved, no amount of money is going to get new teachers into the classroom. Of course, I made a big point of this in my starting conclusions. Go to lesson 4 and view that video again. Who would step into a classroom with students like those depicted in the film? The general strategy for teachers in the U.S. is get them cheap. Without significant pay increases for teachers, we will not be able to draw them out of the general labor pool into the classrooms. There are just too many options. In Lesson 19, we see that the report from the state of Maryland proposes significant pay increases. The next page shows the way decided on what level would be appropriate for the teachers. This table is taken directly from the Kerwin report, which is named after the leader of the project. Here's how the state of Maryland proposed they changed salaries in that state in that study. We do talk about the state of Maryland in one of my lessons. Maryland decided that the only way to move people into the teaching world would be to offer a salary competitive with other occupations requiring a 4-year college degree. On the bottom of Exhibit 4.5, they compute the average pay for existing Maryland teachers to be $64,600. At the top of the table, they list average salaries for non-teaching jobs to attain an average salary across all of these jobs of $80,461. They then propose to set the teachers' average salaries at this level. In other words, they want to average, once they get this installed and so forth, their average teacher is going to be making over $80,000 a year. This represents a 25% increase in their salaries and obviously a large budget item for their budget. Behavior. If you've read many of these lessons, you will find that that is one of my pet peeves, and I'm sure for most people listening it is as well. I don't believe that discipline should be resolved with punishment. There may be many kids in the system, it's just too late, and we need to start over at a very early age of teaching them character and grit. Character and grit are social emotional needs. So this slide, this page deals with that definition, which is, I think, a nice word to use instead of behavior. But if you don't understand that, then you may not understand what it's talking about. I'm going to read this quotation at the top from a Maryland teacher. Social emotional needs are skyrocketing. Discipline is in serious trouble within the schools, and parent involvement is at an all-time low. In Lesson 10, we pointed out that 80,000 public schools in the United States are losing teaching time due to discipline. Lesson 9 points out that in the one study that we did in my book, these losses amounted to a 28% of a classroom instructional period. So when you go look at this table, that was an 80% involvement. This chart implies that it's getting up near 100 because between teachers and administrators, there is 96% agree or strongly agree with that point. This 80,000 school issues and the diagram at right are talking about the same issue. We have serious discipline problems in the vast majority of our schools. As we said in Lesson 21, if a teacher is taking time to manage disciplinary issues, they are not teaching. Lesson 21 confirmed the loss of time, loss of instructional time. Stanford University published a paper that establishes the scientific connection between the discipline gap and the performance gap. They basically quantified common sense. Most of us understand that if there's a real discipline problem in a class, there's not a lot of learning going on. The issue of classroom discipline is a major deterrent to low socioeconomic student learning. Here is a rule that should be universally adopted. It is not allowed that one student interferes with the education of another. We close this lesson with a video featuring my hero, Mark Tucker, the U.S.'s leading expert on education, on how to create a great educational system. The film is more general than just focusing on teachers, but he does talk some about teachers, but it gives you some idea of how the really good systems around the world conduct their educational business.
Jack Jennings, the very highly regarded founder of the Center for Education Policy and in many respects the keeper of the national scorecard on federal legislation, especially No Child Left Behind, recently commented that he can see no improvement in student performance for the country as a whole and for the groups of vulnerable students for which it was intended as a result of the passage of No Child Left Behind. It has been 14 years. There is actually, to come to your question, no surprise in this. If you look at the strategies pursued by the top performing countries in the world in education, you will look in vain for a strategy that looks anything like No Child Left Behind. We look at No Child Left Behind, what we're looking at is Congress demanding value for their money. They wanted to light a fire under teachers, and they wanted to punish those who wouldn't respond. To me, this is perfectly understandable and represents a total misunderstanding of the actual situation. From my perspective, the teachers were caught in a system they did not create. They were caught in a system designed for a totally different purpose, as I will get to in a moment. We need to ask ourselves how the teachers could be blamed for all of this when it was the school boards who gave away all the management prerogatives that they had as an alternative to raising teachers' pay, while at the same time, the top performing countries were working very hard to make beginning teachers' pay equal to that of engineers in their country. We need to ask ourselves why it was, if it was the teachers who were at fault, that state officials kept approving programs of teacher education that have become a national joke. We need to ask ourselves why, if it was teachers who were at fault, this picks up on a point that Dennis just made, legislators, year in and year out, would waive the already very low standards for teachers in order to put a warm body in front of the students, while the top performing countries were making sure, as Dennis said, that there was no shortage of great teachers. In the top performing countries, there is a surplus of great teachers because of the policies they have pursued over the last 20 or 30 years. The fact of the matter is that we are looking at a failed system for which all of us are responsible. The United States has bounced back and forth over the last 40 or 50 years between concentrating on quality and concentrating on equity. We have never seemed to be able to do the same thing at the same time. But it is precisely what these other countries are doing. Very high access and equity combined with very high quality for all students. I guarantee you that cannot be done with the system we have. The answer to your question is, these other countries recognized they had to redesign the system from the bottom up. The OECD publishes a graph. It's got two axes on it. And one is for equity and one is for quality. And in the northeast part of that chart, those countries that are very high in equity and very high in quality. The United States is at the other end of the chart. I want to move us to the northeast part of the chart. And if you look at the countries that are already in the northeast part of the chart, I won't go into the whole thing, but the key points are the following. One is, as I think Dennis said, more resources go to the kids who are hardest to educate than go to the kids who are easiest to educate. And that mostly has to do with the ratio between teachers and kids in the school. There are more teachers in the schools serving kids who are hard to educate. Number two, they have very high standards. They really are benchmarked to the world's best countries, and they are unforgiving about the standards. The standards are very high. The difference is they're organized to meet those standards for all kids. The key to that, basically, is having absolutely first-rate teachers who have been very well trained and are very well supported once they are in the schools. We are recruiting our teachers, probably, it looks as though, from the bottom quarter of the kids who graduate from our high schools and go to college. They are recruiting theirs from the top quarter, the top 20%, the top 15%, in the case of South Korea, the top 5%. That makes a giant difference. We're sending our kids to teachers' colleges for which there is a very low regard. If we're going to have a nation of kids who are in the northeast quadrant of that OECD chart, we have to build a new system. The countries that are now on top, that are serving all their kids, have not done this in 4 years, or 2, or 3. They have done it in 10, 20, and 30 years. I can name you countries. I can give you the history. It was not done overnight. If we cannot get our act together to decide that we want and need a new system and form a consensus about how to build it, we'll see more and more and more kids we want to help today and will not be able to.
This concludes lesson 25, and I thank you very much for your time.